right, so the predominant conversation for this one is going to be about education and wireless. We have a few different speakers here with multiple different kind of topics. The first one was World Digital School, but then David Sandel actually had to take off and had some other emergency. So we're actually going to have a demonstration by Urban Leap. And Urban Leap is a pilot project management platform. We're very excited about using it because it really brings structure to the work that we're doing around demonstration projects in general, and really see how we can kind of put some legs to some of the action clusters in the work we're doing around GCTC. So I'm going to have Eris here do a demonstration, but I want to give some context first of why he's presenting. So for the education supercluster, the forming supercluster, we want to be able to really go towards demonstration projects and pilot projects in general to be the format of how we actually mobilize the work we do. So basically, how can we convert action clusters into actionable clusters, like actually make things happen? And so pilot projects seem to be the way to go. So, and then Urban Leap popped out of nowhere about probably like 8 months ago, I think I met you. And Deborah Acosta, the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Leandro, put us in touch. I don't know how they got in touch, but we were kind of helping with the development of the platform and giving feedback to them as they were developing out the app, the web-based app. So I've kind of seen it now, not from complete scratch, but I've seen it to some extent when it was kind of nascent still. And now it's actually a launch platform and has customers and is usable, and we're using it. And so I'm very excited to see that thing grow. So that's the context of it. I'll let Eris take it from here.
Sure, thanks. I don't think you saw it pretty much from scratch. So
you want to come up here and
yeah. Sure, just give kind of a brief overview. It's funny you mentioned Deborah. So Deborah was one of the first, when we started, we just reached out to anybody we could. She was back then the Chief Innovation Officer of San Leandro. And we had this idea, like many other ideas, and we sent it to her, and she responded with so much excitement. Oh, we don't know how to manage our proposals and vendors and pilots, and our process is kind of messy when we do it a lot. And just from her excitement, this is why we focused initially on this idea, and then from there, things kind of went pretty well from there. And now at the point, we have kind of the initial product and working with a few cities. Yes, I just want to give kind of a, I only have a few minutes. This is pretty impromptu, so not super prepared, but kind of show the overview of what the concept is, what are the different features and functionalities. It's pretty simple, so I hope I can cover most of it in a few minutes. Yeah, so this is how the Uber Leap dashboard looks like. This is what any person in any city set could see, so you can come in and kind of see all the ongoing pilots. We're still looking for the right term. Some call it pilot programs, public prototyping, urban experiments. The whole idea is to iterate, test, and figure out what works and what not. So this is the view of all the active pilots in the city. This is an example. We did a demo with LA, so I'll show you this one. Oops. Used non-Mac for a while. So, yeah, so I'll give kind of an overview of the stages the pilot goes through, and then I go into an individual pilot, show you a little bit of the functionality in there. So pilots starts as prospective projects. So this is a view where you can manage, again, in one place, all the invitations to different vendors, vendor proposals. One thing we discovered along the way, there's also a lot of internal pilots. So not necessarily vendors, things like internal processes or things that the city is testing or trying out. Actually, usually more of those than pilots with vendors. But here you can see all the potential pilots. Once the vetting process is done, which I'll show you how that works, pilots go into the active stage and then essentially move from planning to contracting, tracking, where all the data is gathered, and then final evaluation. When a pilot is completed, go into this kind of completed library. Again, you can always search and go back to historical data and see search for vendors or pilots or technologies that were already tested. One thing that we're really excited to do once we have enough cities is to allow you to do this kind of search across different cities and learn from others as well, not only within one jurisdiction. And a view of shelf pilots if you can't do everything all the time, so after you want to shelve a pilot for later, not go through it and maybe revive it in the future. So that's kind of the overview of the different pieces. There's a little bit more there that I wouldn't go into just for the sake of time. But I will go through the stages of each pilot and the kind of pilot life cycle and what that looks like. So if I go into a specific proposal, so this is actually an interesting, I hope you can see some of what's written there. Interesting pilot startup of Israel happens to be called Zen City. They analyze social media. So here in one place, once the proposal comes to the platform, the right person is notified, and you can kind of review. You can add additional reviewers again to review this potential opportunity. In this case, they attach a one-pager, and you can take a look at. Really interesting startup. Some things around kind of the general pilot structure, so a few things we think are important. One pretty simple feature is pilot timeline, where you can see where you are and what needs to happen next. Once you enter pilot details, which you'll see in a minute, this would kind of expand with more details. The pilot team, so I find this to be simple but important. So you can assign a pilot manager, so this is the person who would be notified about all the milestones and what's happening and would really kind of see the process through. Out of time, just the fact that there's no clear pilot manager makes this type of projects fail. City team, so these are just kind of the internal stakeholders, but also there's an option to include the vendor. And when you're really piloting a new technology or trying to innovate, I personally believe it's really important to include the innovator in the table and use their head to plan the pilot. What kind of metrics do we need to set? What kind of data do we need to measure? And also vendors are very hungry, so they would do a lot of the work to make this successful. So I think we encourage everybody to include the vendors. Of course, discussion and pilot settings, which is just name and department. So this is now the first stage of pilot. So this is not a live pilot yet. Once it's approved, it will move to planning, and that's where things start to get more interesting. So it would go from this prospective phase, prospective view to act. Of course, I won't go into the details of notification, but all the stakeholders will be notified, and then the pilot goes into the planning stage. And here the idea is essentially to agree on the kind of core pieces of a pilot. So of course describe it, but really important is setting up goals up front that everybody can see in one place and are aware of and agree on. Same with risks. Metrics are super important. I'll show you a complete example later, but what we make sure people do here, and we believe is a good practice, is to define the metric, but also the goals. So if you're trying to save, what are you aiming for? 20% or 50% or more than that or less? And really having a goal. So you have an idea at the end of the day, was this successful or not? And this is where the collaboration comes into place, because different opinions can come into the table. And then a few kind of simpler product management issues, such as budget, milestone documents, and so on. Once this is completed, so this is how it would look once it's filled out, or mostly filled out. We're going into the contracting stage. So here we don't provide too much, but we believe it's useful. So one option is to upload your own contract, again, just to have all the records in one place. And you can have different versions, of course. But the other one, like in this case, is you can request a pilot contract from us, and then we take the pilot details, put them into a contract template that we've gathered from different cities who've run pilots before and know how it should look like. And this is surprisingly sometimes takes so many months because legal teams still don't know how to work with this concept of a pilot, how the contract should look like, but it can really be lightweight, and we try to help with that. And so in this case, we will generate a contract, or at least an invest draft for you. We don't have much time, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions or suggestions. And then tracking is when, so the pilot is now live. Again, everybody has been notified, and this is, I think, where the kind of the real action happens. So we give the pilot manager and the vendor the ability to track the metrics, track the milestones, and more importantly, track the different metrics. So again, in one place you can see if you're above target or below. You see what metrics you set up, and you can kind of track it all, and in real time see if you're on track or not, or where we are. If I go to maybe the next chapter. Once the pilot is completed, so again, you can always go back and review the data and change whatever is needed. But this is where kind of this all comes together during the evaluation phase, where you can really see the pilot manager and the team can see a summary of the goals. So what happened with the goals? So this is marked by the pilot manager when he looks at this. The milestones and the individual metrics. You can go back to the data and kind of review it again, and then make a final evaluation. In this case, I'm not a pilot manager, but this one I think, yeah. And then make a final evaluation. Again, what's going to happen next? Do we need to do another pilot? Do we need to extend this pilot? Can we move forward with an RFP? Is this too risky and doesn't make sense? But really make this decision. All the work came together to make this decision based on all the data that is here. Again, once this is done, the pilot would move into the completed stage. You can always go back and see what happened. There's quite a few features that I like and want to show. Derek mentioned one that I should show, and this is the ability to, any stage of the pilot, whether it's proposal or evaluation, data tracking, you can generate a simple report that you can just hand off to people to, again, communicate better what has happened or what we were doing, and do something like this. Again, depends on the type of the pilot and the stage of the pilot. And again, this is something you create with a click of a button and give you kind of the, say, executive level overview of where we are with this, in this case, completed pilot. And again, all the data is there, including the initial proposal. Should be down there somewhere. And yes, we're working with a few cities already. We do see a lot of value in the fact that this is kind of very centralized and collaborative. But what we really believe is that having enough cities on such a platform and really, again, giving a very seamless way to share learnings and find how different cities are solving challenges is essentially what the GCTC is about. And we believe that a platform can help share learnings and help spread good ideas quickly, stop bad ideas from spreading. And that's where we're kind of aiming to be once we have a few more cities on the platform. Yeah, that's kind of the overview.
All right, let's give a round of applause. Maybe like one or two questions for Eris here? Yes.
Yeah.
Just a quick, what do you charge people for it?
Good question. We're still figuring it out. So we learned that cities understand the value of this and are willing to pay for this. And right now our focus is, we believe we can help vendors and make those connections, but we're really focused on reducing friction within the city and kind of drive better results. So the cities we're working with and government agencies are paying for it. Not a huge sum of money, and right now, again, we're still in the early days, so we want to work with the right cities and develop this more. But they're paying, in the thousands of dollars per month. So that's currently the model. I think it will change once we have enough cities, and when we have enough cities, I think vendors will be much more. We can provide more value to vendors. But yeah, currently we're just charging the city a subscription.
That's a subscription.
Yeah.
Like you put on a credit card.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Usually below the RFP, we
Yeah, exactly.
we don't want to deal with that
Exactly.
at our stage.
Stephanie's someone you should probably talk to because she works with Oakland City Book.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, a lot of cities. Yeah, we should talk.
Sure,
So I was
sure.
trying to get the price.
Oh, all right, sure.
Shannon?
So with the tracking of milestones, maybe you mentioned this, do you send out like email notifications to project members or is this a platform where you kind of go in and kind of check the status of it? Does it push out?
Yes, yes. So we learn almost any action that you take, the team members will be notified, again, in different ways. So you have in-app notifications, like this ones. You actually have a few new ones from Hayward. But also, if you haven't checked those, within a day or two, it depends on how you define it, you get a notification, hey, you have 7 updates, in different pilots. We learned that this is one of the problems with pilot projects. It's rarely that the main job of someone in the city, is to manage pilots. So then it's kind of being forgotten, and then 2 months later, hey, we missed all the milestones. So we actually see a lot of value in sending a notification. People come back, click a couple of buttons, and it really just keeps things moving. So yeah, we do that. Okay, so
Right.
2 questions, so I guess we're done.
Yep. Move on to the next one. Thanks, Eris.
Thank you.
So Shiva is responsible, so Shiva and Farid is the ones presenting. It's going to be the Advanced Flood Warning Environmental Awareness System for the city of Roanoke Park. Farid, Chair of Department of Engineering Science at Sonoma State University, and Shiva Kumar Mathapathy, co-founder and CTO of Do Mobility. Shiva's actually the one that told me about GCTC, so he's responsible for everything that I'm doing. So he is the guy. So thank you for that. And I'll take some time. So Shiva, go for it.
Thank
This works. Just have 10 minutes.
Sure, 10 minutes. Good afternoon, thank you for being here. I should also add that Shiva told me about all these things, so the reason I'm here is because I just go first, just to kind of bring some introduction material, and then after that, he's going to continue. Basically, being in the education supercluster, we just wanted to give you a little of our experience as to how we think we can potentially approach the city and how we can kind of introduce some of the IoT technologies and to the city, and what's the right approach? Like, how do you actually bring together all these stakeholders, including the enterprises, educational institutions like universities and colleges, as well as the city, people who are actually in the city and then make the decisions. So this presentation is mostly just to kind of give you our vision of how our experience with the city has been and what has worked and what hasn't, and what we think we can potentially take it as the next step. So our vision in terms of approaching the city, we think, and the smart city in general, we think as several speakers in the morning very well defined the way the concept of smart city is. We think a smart city should be, the goal of the smart city should be improving the quality of humans, right, people. It should be basically technology which emphasizes on improving the quality of life more than anything else. To that end, the goal of this smart city should really be sustainability. That's basically sustainability, so creating a sustainable economy and environmental sustainability, which really sustainability is nothing more than getting feedback from the society, from all the resources and how the resources are being used. And based on that, we try to provide community education and kind of create some kind of information management system that we basically tell the community how the resources are being used and how they can potentially change the behavior in such ways that the community as a whole can benefit. And therefore, to eventually we make much more informed decisions. So that's a kind of a sort of a roadmap that we think the smart city should really follow. And therefore, if you really think about all these things, so obviously the concept of the smart city is more than just bringing this smart technology and smart sensors and just putting all these sensors but in different places. Rather, it really needs to bring these three entities, the smart government and municipalities, smart technologies, and a smart consumer. So it really needs to create a synergy between these three stakeholders. To that end, we think, for example, the smart citizens, potentially this concept of promoting the smart city and sustainability should really create this activism in consumers and in the community, within the community. So it can actually bring the community together, get them participate in the concept. So when, for example, we decide to put these cameras in the street, people don't think that, well, what are you going to do with this camera? Are you tracking people? What's this? What is the purpose? And we have found out, based on the experience that we have had, that if it's only between the city and enterprises, it becomes very suspicious. A lot of these, especially when it comes to security and potentially invading the privacy of the public, the whole concept becomes kind of a suspicious concept from many communities. So to that end, it makes a lot more sense if you bring these neutral components there, which in this case, we believe that is really colleges and universities, because they really don't have anything to gain, and basically their main idea is to provide education. So if you bring this concept of educational institution and help, so through the educational institution, you create a sort of a platform that you bring the enterprises as well as the community and municipalities together and create a common platform that they can communicate with each other, show their technologies, and show the potential test cases, that can be a very successful model. Therefore, really, we see the colleges and institutional education and universities in general is really a facilitator more than anything else that can really create an atmosphere to promote the IoT and smart city technologies. And to that end, we have been thinking about creating perhaps a curriculum, some workshops for city members, or some small platforms, maybe like 4-hour workshop, maybe 1-day workshop, that we can kind of bring some of these technologies. So we become a way, and through that, we connect cities together, we connect technologies and city and municipalities together. And I think at this point, the basic idea of these workshops, which is a part of the education aspect of the smart city, would really be reaching out to stakeholders, kind of show them what are the best practices, so not every city needs to recreate the whole IoT technology search for things. Just tell them like what has worked in other cities. Just kind of relay some of the existing experiences. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Shiva. And Shiva is going to talk about some of the curriculums that we have been developing for cities and how some of these workshops can be beneficial.
Yeah. Thank you, Farid. I think this is the derivative of last time few of you have met in the Washington, D.C., that we thought that there is some kind of discussions needed on the smart city. So how we created this syllabus is actually we have reduced down from the semester or a quarter syllabus what we have been teaching. So basically, we'll have 5 sessions in that. Session 1 will have an overview of a smart city and block diagram, building the block, what are the components involved in that. So it's basically give them a little bit of a background on that. And in the session 2, it's more on a technical, we just deep down into technical, more on the hardware, operating systems, what networking technology on there. Some people may be interested, some IT people may want to know these ingredients, they would like to include that into that. And then session 3 is about the cloud and analytics. Basically, when you see any smart city, we have 4 components, right? One is the sensor, which is actually accessing the your inputs, and then you have the microcontroller unit where it is processing it, and then the networking, and the 4th one is the cloud. So we just walk them through on the cloud technologies, what the cloud is, and what's the database technology they're using it, analytics, and interfacing the hardware, and what kind of a technology they need to really implement a smart city projects there. So, and then this is one of the important which we added when we had our earlier curriculum, the cybersecurity and privacy was not there. When GCTC introduced that it is a mandatory that we need to have a cybersecurity, then in fact I started learning on cybersecurity, blockchain and some of the aspects, then we started including those aspects. Now we have a full circular curriculum on that into the syllabus there on the session 4. So these are about the marketing, business and then the technology. Then on the session 5, what we'll do is that we will just see how a prototype design, because all this time you see the prototype, right? It could be a Raspberry Pi or your Arduino board. How do you convert them into productions? Many smart city team, they ask me, how do I make this prototype into productions? And then we talk about the PCB design. I know it's a little bit of technical, but I thought it will complete overview for them to bring a prototype to the production. So PCB design, what's the 3D printing, system integration, testing QA, and then what is the final acceptance test as per the standards, because it has to be designed as per the NIST standards or as per the ISO standards. The product has to be designed as per that. Then we talk about the standards. And then after that, we actually recap, and then we brainstorm with all the stakeholders. Like what is your problem? Because each city has got various different problems, right? San Leandro has got certain set of problems. It doesn't mean the same problem in the Ronald Park. And I'm just sharing my experience with them. So we'll sit with them and what are your problems areas, and discuss the next action items. And we don't want to just leave just a theory over there. What are the next action items? We list the actions, and then the feasibility of getting grants. Of course, we also try to connect them to some of the National Science Foundations. By sharing this, in Silicon Valley, what I've seen is a tremendous response and support coming up. People like Samsung, people like ARM, people like IBM, they want to participate in that. They said, okay, we have the technologies, we have something, we can help to the city and the community, and they want to participate in that. We want to bring them to the board and then share with that to the city officer there. And then connecting possibly for corporate, even private investment. Some of the cities may not be having the networking. So we would like to make sure that we invite them as a guest lecturer in the workshop. They will share about what is happening on those, and they also get exposed to that. And then we don't want to leave it there. We want to set a next day. What is the next action item you want to do it? Whether you want to come to a GCTC like this and present your own case, or be part of the action cluster of other city, so that you can learn from other cities. So that's the whole concept. This has been again derived. I have been attending GCTC for last 4 years, 3.5 years. I know what problems are there because cities, they come out with their own requirement. But I thought as an academic, we should go there and teach them what exactly is their responsibility, what are the ingredients, what exactly they should do. So this we are trying to use the first effort. We are kicking off now. Our goal is to get at least our own city, Ronald Park. We already talked to the city manager. We want to start with them, and next we want to implement with other cities out there. So this is the curriculum. In fact, we have a poster session. Those of you are interested, we have put everything in a poster session today, tomorrow, and the day after. So you are more than welcome to attend that poster session. And these are our contacts. If anyone is interested, feel free to reach us. We can share this information.
All right.
Thank you.
Shiva. One or two questions. Anyone has one?
So you're, you said you're implementing this at Sonoma State. So, and so I guess these partners will come to you at your university. So like you wanted to come to another, like more like Oakland or like San Diego, somewhere over there. Where would you want to be in?
Yeah, good question. Actually, ideally we want to go to the city so that it will facilitate to others also to attend instead of just one or two. We want to go to the city office, and conduct the training. Say, for example, Ronald Park, which is a part of Sonoma State. We would like to go to the city. They can assemble 10 or 15 people, and we want to do that. And similarly for San Leandro City, we would like to go there. But in some cases, they may not be able to come. Yes, Sonoma State, we have a facility, they're more than welcome to do that. Not only that, we also have this, I didn't cover up on this, is that we have it's called a maker space, which is funded by National Science Foundations. If any city want to build the prototypes, they can always come to the maker's space and build a prototype from scratch. Yes, that's available.
Cool.
Yeah. Yes, please.
It seems that education in the area of smart cities is hot right now. Everybody's trying to start an academy and I'm just wondering what kind of coordination might be taking place to avoid reinventing the wheel or establishing some standards for training. I'm assuming that the education supercluster might be heading towards that, but I'm wondering how much buy-in there are from other universities in the U.S. and then maybe even worldwide.
Well, I think as far as this effort is concerned, we want to launch it for wherever we have implemented our smart city use cases. Actually, 3 cities, in fact, I'm the team lead for that. We want to implement in that. Now, how do we expand it? I think this is a great platform. We want to, route it to this platform and extend it on. And apart from that, there are some companies, they also want to go into their own database, so they said that, okay, we want to participate. So these are the 3 aspects we would have to go through. Farid, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm not personally aware of any educational institution that's just providing resources like this. I mean, there are a lot of educational material, but most of the time they're either selling it or they're actually introducing people to a particular product so they buy it. In this particular case, we're basically just connecting, we're really facilitating. And we're hoping that through this, we can gain some experience and as Shiva said, this is the best place to kind of share that information to see what worked and what didn't work, and kind of share our information with experiences with each other.
Is there an expectation that there might be a certification process at the end of that, or?
I think that's really where we're going, and we're hoping that potentially this becomes a certificate program. But as you were mentioning, it needs to work out a couple of things, just to kind of see what makes sense really for them and what's useful really should be considered.
Great, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to switch it up a little bit. Shiva actually, along with Farid, has about 2 or 3 presentations, and Stephanie Hayden here has 2. And so I'm going to switch it up and actually weave you guys in a little bit. And I'll push Catherine up a little more. She can hear me, but I'll push her up a little bit. I'm going to push you up a little bit on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll have Shiva and Stephanie, your last 2, kind of more on the inside. So Stephanie, would you like to do the next one?
Sure.
So Stephanie Hayden is CEO and founder of Vision Architecture. I know you started a new organization, which you'll tell more about that later.
In order, though, could we do the constituent one first?
Yep, so she had, her action cluster is constituent-led public data and IoT utility for urban health, housing, and environmental hazard management. That's a mouthful,
Yeah.
but there's going to be some interesting content for that. So let's do it. All right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna fly through it. Hi there. So my name is Stephanie Hayden, and I have a consulting practice that works on smart cities for about the last 20-something years, public sector, private sector. And over time, I realized that I think what we're all realizing too is that no one's designing for the constituents, for like all the people anywhere. So recently I started volunteering pro bono work to the city of Oakland so I could get more involved and figure out what people want in every community. And so what has come out of that is also realizing that there really aren't software vendors who are building smart city platforms that are built for the constituency. So I started a software company too. So what I'm about to show you is basically Oakland's utilization of smart city planning and strategy and visioning with services built around constituents and what they are all really concerned about, and the technology that we built to host that. So there's some like me slides in there just talking about clients, right? The only reason I'm doing that is just to kind of show you the breadth of private sector and public sector. And so I kind of consider these clients like advisors. You know, whenever we have questions, we can go to them and ask them about their city and about their products that they're selling. So the goal of this constituent public data and IoT utility is to create a blueprint, right, that we can use and share with everybody. That's focusing on Oakland, right, but the goal is extensibility, so you guys just use the same pattern, really apply it to your city.
leverage the community coalitions that already exist, right? Like sometimes there's like community councils, sometimes there's like a hookup with like Oakland Police Department, they have beats, things like that, so there are already people in the network that can be part of your project. And leverage the people, the process, and the technology. What everyone in the Bay Area is worried about right now is housing. Turns out I think that that's happening everywhere. I heard everyone talking about it since I've been in Portland, right? Certain communities always getting pushed out, that kind of thing. So focus on the short term and, focus on the short and long term. And the sustainable outcomes, right? Like in the case of Oakland, there's super old buildings, super old schools, brand new things, right? So how can we make the old new again? And then figure out sustainable solutions for the systems that we do want to keep, even if they're old and legacy. If they're good, then like let's upgrade them to make them sustainable. So the goal of this project is to give you guys, so those are some of the clients, some teams, but we worked on it, like I focused a lot on the public sector over the last probably 10 years, just because I wanted to get at how can we get the services to the people. And so what happened is I just had to make us a nonprofit. So we really focus on people, planet, profit. I don't know if everyone uses that term around here, but you know, the triple bottom line, right? Like, don't just think about selling products, but think about sustainability. So there's some future city projects we've worked on. So my background started, the CIO of the city of Oakland reached out to me and said, hey, we've got this federal DOT Smart City Challenge, can you help us? So I jumped in on that, met a bunch of really cool, innovative people at the city. And then they asked me to work on Resilient Oakland, which was Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient Cities initiative. And that was, how do we reach out to the whole, 450,000 people and get them all to go through digital transformation together. So I was pulled in for that project. So we were like, kumbaya, right? Like, this is great. Here's all the problems in Oakland. We all started triangulating on them and being like, yes, we're gonna collaborate and say, like, it's gonna be fantastic, right? So they created a civic design lab to have thinkers all come together. And this is actually, I'm happy to say, the top there, the cupola is our like meeting space. I love to invite the super cluster to meet up there. So it is an amazing place, but so then we got slammed pretty much as soon as we launched these strategies with these huge housing and environmental issues, right, that are killing people and poisoning people. So the ghost ship fire and lead poisoning. So we said, all right, let's just get in and do something about this. So we took that same crowdsourced approach to say, well, like, how can we engage with the constituency and start showing live data about what's really happening in every community. So on the left, that's the list of micro communities in Oakland. So there's 146 actually, and every community has a totally different personality, right? But the behaviors in the communities will generally be the same. There's somebody always talking about business, somebody talking about education, somebody talking about tax, it's the same people, right? But different cultural connections between the people. So we're creating basically live leaderboards that are allowing the constituency to submit their own data. So here's the big change. It's that this is user-owned and contributed data. What is on this platform, we don't own it, right? I'm not selling it to some big vendor or telecom company or anything like that. It's the individuals in the communities that own this data. And they can choose what they want to share and surface. So what we did was reach out to this existing network. It was a really cool project that was called the Neighborhood Project. That's the 146 communities. And then we said, okay, well, if we start, I turned it into a beehive, right? Everybody's got their little hexagon. So those are the community names, and we mapped those to voting districts. And then somebody else came to me and said, hey, we've got 56 community councils that are already tied to the cops and already have active community members. So I was like, wait a minute. And they go, hey, if you just tell us how to capture stuff, we'll just give it to you because we know how to run our neighborhood. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. So they came in, and because of that, we've been able to screen the entire city of Oakland, find where all the lead poisoning is, where all the kids at risk are. And now the problem is we don't know who to connect them with. Turns out it's probably going to be those community members. So here's how we jump forward. We reached out and just did network. I literally stood up in front of a crowd full of people at a Code for America event, City Camp 2017, and said, hey, we're the Bay Area, we can fix lead poisoning, who's going to help me? And about 80 people showed up in our workshop and stuck around through the year. And then we turned Smart Oakland, and like Steph Curry in there. Anyway, so there's all kinds of people getting involved, right? going, yeah, this is really bad. So the challenge was, lead gets into people, no matter how old you are, it's really bad. Summary. And the challenge was, hey, we can't find it because it's invisible, so we can't stop it. So this being open with the community and saying, you guys know the answers about how to fix what's going on in your neighborhood. This is just what I know. How about I bring you the data? So it's a big community of people, big consortium, big collections of people fighting for a bunch of different rights, unified together around let's protect the kids. This piece is the cyber security piece, which is important to understand. The application that we're building to find the data, to find lead poisoning is 3 basic steps. You gotta find it first, then you can fund it, then you can fix it. So the data flow here, if you start in the upper left, is the people, I'm gonna bring the data to them on an app, and I say, hey, like high likelihood in that house, there's a problem. So first, we recommend you get your kid tested for lead in their blood, then test your house, and then know your rights. At any point, people can opt out, right? But they can also choose to share their results back up through public-facing data dashboards, like public Tableau. This is where we're gonna be able to say, down to the council voting district or even street level, this is how many houses are hot on this block. 2 minutes left. I think I'm in. So funded then, those become live dashboards that show the number of houses that need abatement, that sort of thing. Which means then they become investment dashboards for energy efficiency promotions and things like that. So all the way to the end, the fixing it, that is just connecting you with contractors and doctors and things that can fix your problem for you. So it turns out there's all kinds of data, questions, security, but what we want to share with people is the value of understanding that when you control it, you can say all of the great things that will start happening for you, as an individual contributor versus they're tracking me, right, and selling my data about me to somebody else. So, you have any questions about that? Let me know. And this is just, that's the collision intersection, I call it. Constituents don't want anyone to track them, but they want a bunch of good stuff for free, right? The public sector wants to track you so they can keep calm and control of things, and they have to deliver city services. Regulatory agencies don't want people tracking people without telling them. And then the private sector says, hey, if you're not paying, you're what we're selling, right? You're the product. So these data collisions is kind of our big outreach for education. And I'll wrap up after this one, because I have another deck too, that we can lead into, but I wanted to clarify what the data is. So we are predictively putting information together, sharing it with constituents to say, high likelihood, there's a problem in your house, but I don't know for sure. The next step is user-validated data, calling that level 2, because someone's got eyes on, they've tested it themselves, they've done these little unchecked tests. Ask me for some, I have them. So when that's validated by the person in the house, the next step is an XRF scan, which is a scientific scan that is defensible in court. So there's 3 different levels. And here's some outcomes. If we do this, people can look and see, like Carfax for your house. Make sure that you don't get a hot house because you can't tell by looking at it. The next one would be, if you're in a house and your kid is sick, here's your little Find It, Fund It, Fix It app that connects you with a bunch of info and a lawyer. And lawyers can look at a whole city, so can city planners. And this is the last piece, is connecting to first responders. So we can connect all those people that are being poisoned with somebody who can help them. And that's it. There's other stuff, but, oh yeah, actually, real quick. When we ran this, I said, well, this is for Alameda County Healthy Homes, because they have a hard time finding the low-income folks who qualify for lead funds with kids. And so I said, okay, well, let me run the numbers, but the problem is we found everybody. They actually only have money for 70 homes, but we found everyone. So that's where we are now.
Thanks.
Yeah.
1 or 2 questions? She has a lot of interesting content there.
Yeah, it's packed. You guys can see it.
Any questions about her? I really appreciate what you're doing here. All the maps really get to me, because it really just shows the scale of the problem. But also, I'm just close to Oakland, so I know what the problems are, and it's very real. And it's the way you think and how to put it all together is really fascinating. So I'm glad
on metropolitanintelligence.com, that's where there's a bunch of maps, and I asked you guys all to check that out too, because it's where you can zoom out the whole Bay Area, and we put you guys in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got a demo there.
Yeah.
Sweet. All All right, so Catherine, I'm thinking about you going next. So, and we had the pleasure to invite Catherine over to my home city in San Leandro about 2-3 months ago. And she told us all about Civic and what she's doing over there with Hack Oregon and her whole squad of folks. It's just so impressive. Well, you know, I'm not going to spill the beans, but she is looking for cities, and I think that was our conversation, was how do we bring this kind of huge volunteer crew of folks to really mobilize, right, cities, just like what you did, Stephanie, with the 80 folks. Right? I know you've got about 125 folks just volunteering their time Tuesday, Thursday, 6 to 9, just building apps and building solutions. I mean, that's the type of stuff I think we're moving towards when we're talking about education, is getting the community involved in a really meaningful way with solving things and collaborating with municipal government. So I'll let Catherine go into her spiel now. And she's the founder and executive director of Hack Oregon. And her squad of folks created the Civic Data Platform, so that's the action cluster name, Civic Data Platform, data by the people, for the people. So Catherine, why don't you come up here and we'll get you all set up.
Thank you. Actually, I have an extra special treat for everybody. We have our CTO, Michael, is also here for the Civic Platform.
All right, CTO's here. And did you have an actual speech?
No, I like to do is just
Talk.
just do a little.
Did you want to go online? Anything?
No, I think let's just talk to the group because we have the demo tomorrow.
Right.
They'll be showing us
And you, yes, please. Tell them about everything if you can. I don't know if I can freeze this so that you don't see anything. Maybe just put it on the normal side.
Okay, great. Wow, well, there is a lot to talk about. I'm gonna take just about 5 minutes and let Michael talk with you more about some of the tech side under the hood of how it works, particularly as it relates to security. But for those of you who are not familiar with our work, I'm Catherine. I'm the executive director of Hack Oregon, which is a nonprofit here in Oregon. We're building open data projects that are addressing issues with data that Oregonians care about, and we're doing this in a way that's very visual, and it's more than just coding cute apps. We're really building meaningful systems that cut at the core of how government can function, and in a way that is our best expression of really utilizing data science and other means of modern technology. So education is an imperative around how we're able to grow and evolve the data projects that we can produce. Over years, Hack Oregon has built dozens of freestanding software applications. Each one of those have addressed different themes that have had independent life cycles, including direct impact on policy, on investment decisions. They've informed the baseline of understanding for many of these complex information challenges. And from doing this over and over again, realizing that we can actually streamline this code base, of course, everything we do is open source, but we had some challenges year over year just taking our work and being able to push it farther, because when you answer one question with data, you just have 5 more questions immediately pop up. And so when you're looking at this from a perspective of how cities actually manage to get pilot funding and put a lot of time and effort into building these stand-up, individualized software applications that address targeted issues, like, I mean, I just get tingles looking at the work that Stephanie's done, because it's such a powerful example of how you can take information, use innovative frameworks that are essentially freely available through the technology we have in open source, and then apply those with ingenuity and collaboration in partnership with government, using data to target in on something that moves the needle. But then even once you do that, you have another whole landscape ahead of you. And so what we've done is built a platform that's generalized some of these challenges that we tend to find as we build these types of stand-up applications. We do this with enormous groups of volunteers, and to give you a sense of scale,
We got more than 2,000 applications this year of people who wanted to join Hack Oregon teams. We took the top 125, and half of them went through 3 to 6 months of training before they ever came into the project room. And then after that, it's a serious time commitment. It's 6 months of 10 hours a week, and you really get to know each other. And the people who are participating in this are often experts, but there's also people who are kind of just starting out and coming from all different angles. We're not just teaching people to code, we're teaching people how to build systems. And the material for how we do this is with public data, because it's such a wealth of potential information, and also there's some serious systemic challenges when it comes to designing better information systems. But if you see this as the material for learning in our production environment is an applied setting, the outcomes really reflect that point in time of inquiry. And these projects with data, you can build them so that they are alive. And kind of passing this off to Michael, we have, that brings up some real challenges when you talk about security, right? When you're building open data and things that are very personal, affecting people's lives, we deal with sensitive data a lot. And how do we do that as part of a massive open source project that's also living on the web?
Yeah, so talking about not only security, but sort of every single component of the platform, there are a lot. So it's really, we're asking a lot of volunteers to come in and say, this is a story we want to tell. Can you make sure to tell the story, implement the APIs, get all the data together, do all the analysis, create a website, publish that in the cloud, make sure it's secure. So really one person can't do all of that. And even getting a team to do it reliably is really difficult. But what we observe year over year is that a lot of the challenges for every project end up being really common. So as we iterate year over year, the question sort of asked is, what is repeatable and how do we make it repeatable? And this year, we've gotten the closest we've ever gotten, and next year will again be the closest we've ever gotten to something that is a template for success, no matter what the project is. And some of those common problems end up being, now that we know a partner that has data that we would like to make public, how do we get that data from a partner in a secure fashion? How do we then take that and we analyze it? How do we make sure that there aren't bad actors within our own organization who could take this data, publish it on their own? And how do we make sure that when we're doing analysis on this data, if it has personally identifiable information in it, how do we make sure that what we end up publishing doesn't have that anymore? And then how do we make sure that this database isn't even going to fall over once we have that data? How do we make sure that that's now an API that can be hit, that can be used to build websites on top of? And a lot of that stuff ends up being common tools. So not to get too technical in 10 minutes, but like a lot of the common pipelines we're using here are just end-to-end encryption through data transfer. Everything's over TCP. We're also making sure that we're using the same database technology. Everybody's on Postgres right now, and that helps a lot for making sure that our systems are patched and that our consistent volunteers can be subject matter experts in that technology. And this is also true for our APIs, which are currently in Django. And again, making sure that we have consistent volunteers who know Python can do that well. And by having this repeatability for all of those technologies, it means that we can bring in people who are subject matter experts and not expect them to be technology experts or cloud experts. Because now we can have people come in and say, hey, I know transportation systems really well, and I can add a lot to your analysis using my knowledge. And they can have the confidence of contributing to our platform without also accidentally setting up a bomb on the cloud that's going to make us accountable, because we have processes in place to make sure that whatever we build is going to be secure using those same principles we've developed year over year.
How much time do we have, Derek?
You guys have 4 minutes.
4 minutes?
3 minutes.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. So I want to bring this up a level and just think about the big picture of what we're doing when we talk about solving issues with data. You can just hear that what we've been moving toward after all of this experience of doing different kinds of projects is that this is becoming streamlined and this is becoming a sort of massive engine. And you need to have certain types of platform things in place in order to drive continuous development, especially even if you're not working with volunteers. We've seen a lot of other types of companies like potentially Uber and Facebook that have started out trying to solve one challenge or connecting people. Airbnb, just having people rent out their vacation spaces. But now The value is in this data that's all connected. And when you think about the enormous amount of value that government has to drive insight, we have a fundamentally different position as custodians for how we utilize it. But the platforms that we look to from the tech space are influenced by a bottom line and the types of technologies that's available. We have a different type of option. You know, we're fundamentally not limited when it comes to building the types of solutions that cities want to see, and to do this in a rapid development fashion. But we also have to solve how to be safe and how to be responsible with privacy and with security. And so this is actually going to require an enormous amount of reflection, a hard look at our ethics and what we really want to do. And I don't just mean Hack Oregon, I mean, it's this is participation with everyone. And so when I think about the only possible way that we can be successful to grow this into something that is really useful to move the needle on how we're handling these democracy as an information challenge, we have to be on education. We're going to have to talk a lot about not only just the specializations for you know, how to implement better security standards, and they're going to change and to keep pace with visualization and all of the things for the web, but this is multidisciplinary, and this is not individualized types of training where you certify somebody in a code school. This is getting a skill set that then you can contribute as part of a group, and it's a long-term, sustained effort. And tomorrow, we are going to be launching our civic platform live at Revolution Hall. It's about a mile away from here. I will hook you guys up with tickets if you haven't already got them. We're going to be sold out, about 850 people at this theater. It's a live demo, and sometimes when words sort of fail to describe exactly what we've got in terms of lightning in a bottle, we can create a direct experience. And so we're really happy that you're here in Portland, and I'm happy to see you around for the next couple of days of the conference.
So just FYI, that demo day for Hack Oregon for the civic platform is on the agenda for Global Tech Jam on Thursday at the very bottom at 6 p.m. Revolution Hall. Okay. So feel free to talk to Catherine about it. I'll be there.
Yeah. Hackoregon.org. You may still be able to get tickets online. We opened up a few extra just for the conference, so they're free, but they'll be checking tickets at the door. So.
Great. Any questions for Catherine?
Do people get to, I know you guys engage with cities, but is there a cost if people want to use it before they go through training? Or like,
sure.
Do you separate it out?
Yeah, so, well, Stephanie, we met, you know, several months ago, and so we've been learning a lot more about what's going to be successful to help cities make this work for them. And so, first and foremost, the code as of tomorrow when we launch, it's going to be completely 100% free and open on the web. So you can download and clone that repo for Civic if you want to, right? But for our platform, and as we're growing, you're managing the different data sources and creating opportunities that when we have more data that are using similar API models and other analytics, that we can then create more advanced cross-regional opportunities for insight. There is value to wanting to meet all of our standards so that we can actually integrate that into the main platform. And that's still possible to do without any training if you've got people who know what they're doing, can read the documentation, and that you also know how to handle your data. It's possible that someone can be contributing to the platform, creating their own things, and they don't need training, and they don't really need to pay anything. On the other hand, what we've been realizing is there's a huge interest from cities. We just got overwhelmed as it started to get out over the last several months, and I was traveling, and frankly, just the amount of interest that we had that then got blocked by an enormous amount of other almost policy considerations with security, and then like cities have a bunch of ideas of what they want to do, much like what you've managed to pull off. And with looking at lead poisoning, there's a lot of work, as you know, that goes into getting just to a place where you can set up a project. We can help to facilitate that, and we can work with cities to make this a plan for success, and also have it match standards that are now, you know, being reused, so that when you do a project like this, if it's running in Civic, it's now reproducible in another place. And it probably would just take a little bit of adjustment to the types of codes and data that you already have to make that happen, but you don't have to go through all the R&D in the first place because you've already done it. Some cities are starting with ideas, some cities are starting with successful pilots, some cities are actually working with legacy systems that have been a decade that haven't been touched. And so every single city is going to need different consideration. And so we are accepting applications for an inaugural cohort of members for the Civic Software Foundation, which I guess is kind of spilling the beans, but we are, Hack Oregon is growing into the Civic Software Foundation rather than being a locally focused nonprofit building projects here in Oregon. Hack Oregon will remain like a rapid prototyping lab building projects in Oregon, but we're going to be focused nationally on helping our member cities get their data running into Civic and building the things that they want to see.
And just FYI, I think as we kind of do the work with the education supercluster, how can we leverage Urban Leap as a project platform to kind of track the metrics, track the goals, kind of get what the Civic Software Foundation wants and wants to see happen onto that platform, so we can actually add cities to that, so they can see the metrics of how, if they were to deploy, what would it look like. So we're looking to see how we can structure some of this work so that we can actually do it fluidly and then really connect the dots and people together so we can get that happen.
Yeah. And if I can make just an ask to the group before we go and something to think about, if as we have success with the Civic platform, this is a win for everybody who's working with the education supercluster, because I think that we're going to need a really good roundtable of people who are thinking about how education in the smart city space is enabling the actual technology outcomes that we want to see. And I don't know until we start working with our member cities really where they're going to need this support. I know there's going to be technical troubleshooting they want, but ultimately they're going to need to figure out ways to work with existing partnerships or working with open source or having talent that they have to build this stuff themselves. And so what is going to be required is this is not just technical training. I really feel like this is a workflow challenge and a policy challenge to be able to have everything running on all cylinders. And so I hope that I can have a continued dialogue with this group, and as we grow through the supercluster to roundtable all of the different ways that we can help cities make this work.
I'm sure you're going to have more time after demo day.
Yeah, and see you tomorrow at Revolution Hall.
All right. All right, so back to Farid and Shiva. So I think the advanced flood warning one, right? So back to Farid with Sonoma State and Shiva Kumar, advanced flood warning environmental awareness system for the city of Roanoke Park. So the one, I'm sorry, that they presented before was IoT-enabled smart city workshop for city, private public communities. So that was the one they did last time. Is it this one here? Shiva, this one here. Which one is it? This one here. Yeah, I guess you should slide it.
Good afternoon, and thanks for sticking out. My name is Farid again, and I am here to present you a test case of how, in one particular case, how Sonoma State and a particular company, Do Mobility, which was represented by Shiva, and the city of Roanoke Park, how we were managed to do one project in particular, which in this case was actually establishing a flood warning system for the city. And to kind of tell you a little about our experience, the challenges, and also Shiva will talk a little about the technical issues that we ran into and what kind of feedback we received from the city itself. So just to very broadly give you a background about the city. City of Rohnert Park is, let me just show you the map. We're kind of like northern west part of California. In particular, the city of Sonoma, city of Rohnert Park is actually a part of Sonoma County in Northern California. That area in particular is a little well known. Maybe some of you have heard about the fire which was there in November, and unfortunately that resulted in about 7% of the city of Santa Rosa was completely destroyed because of the fire. And recently we haven't had a lot of rain. If you live in California, you know that. But when we do have rain, especially in Northern California, sometimes we do have these flash floods. And because of that, in particular, that area is also has a lot of wineries. The wine industry is estimated to be $1.3 billion for Northern California, that area that we live in. And therefore, having floods obviously can have severe impact on not only for people, residents, but also for the agriculture and economy of that part of California. So the problem that we've had is basically the city of Rohnert Park, especially because of the exact location that is located at, which is basically we're surrounded by these hills. When it floods, it really destroys a lot of residential areas in that particular area in the city. So city has been dealing with this issue for a long time, and over probably about a year and a half after long discussions, the task was given to the university to see if there is any particular way that we can actually come up with some projects for students that collaboratively, along with cooperating with some of the industries, local industries, we can design a system which can potentially tell whether there's going to be any flood or not. So it's kind of a flood prediction system. So that was basically the task that was basically given to the university by the city. And the idea was whether this, before they actually go and spend a lot of money on different existing systems for a flood monitoring system, whether there's any possibility that we can actually come up with some existing technology and show it to a test case. Like what kind of, first of all, for example, that data that you gather, where does it go? How are you going to manage that data? How secure is that data? Or, for example, how much is the cost of maintaining that data? So all of those things were questions for City of Rohnert Park. So it just turned out that this could be a great case for the university and university students to kind of just come up with these little projects and basically see if they can come up with a reasonable approach to resolve potentially this kind of problem. So what happened is basically, I'm just going to jump ahead. In collaboration with Do Mobility, it took about a year for 3 teams of students to actually design a system, both hardware and software, to see if we can create a flood, basically a water flow monitoring system. One of the things that came out from this experience was basically bringing in people from Amazon and IBM, because as you know, one of the issues is, so where do you keep the data? How do you actually visualize the data? How do you show it to people? How do you actually perform the predictions? So this was a really interesting experience because up till that time, the city of Rohnert Park had really had no interaction with any of these high-tech companies. And it was a great way for them, along with the university, along with another industry, to get together, talk about like these issues and how the city can potentially utilize some of the existing companies. In fact, through these discussions, we were able to get 2 years of free service from Amazon, and that's how we basically started using AWS as a main source of collecting the data. This experience, which basically Shivo is going to talk about some of the technical issues, but really the basic idea was the goals of the project where whether we can, by deploying 5 of these systems throughout the city, whether there's any possibility that over a long-term period, we can potentially reduce some of the flood effects by perhaps 15%. Or there could be a fast flood response that can tell people to evacuate before anything severe happens or any major damage happens to the area. In addition to that, we also wanted to see if there's any possibility to predict some of the cases, some of the flood cases that can happen through the existing system, and in particular with collaboration with people from Amazon and AWS. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Shiva, and he's going to go over some of the technical challenges that we went through and how we resolved some of those.
Thanks, Farid. So this is about our time frame deployment, what like Farid mentioned, how we went about it. Initially, when we started in the phase 1, we all used the open source hardware and open source cloud, where we don't have to pay because university doesn't have the budget. But we had a good use cases. City said that we have use cases. Can you utilize the students and bring out some prototypes? Then we utilize that. And now, like Farid mentioned, we have industry coming forward and saying that why don't you use our kind of a product solutions and show them proof of concept with them. That's why we tried with Amazon Web Services. Samsung came out and they have a new Arctic platform. Then we started implementing using that. So how we went about is that in terms of the, these are of course the key performance indicators. As per that, we have the spreadsheet. Like Sapu mentioned in the spreadsheet, what are the key performance you're going to have it. So these are the key performance we have in the action cluster sheet, and we are following it up, though we are very close, but some of the aspects is not in our hand because we're trying to collect the data. The goal is for last 1 year, we have collected a lot of data. Now this is the time how we derive a product out of from that data. So this is talk about my block diagram of the system, how we went about it. So typically we analyzed it, what are the components available out there. I noticed that there is a satellite system available in the mountains, which is again donated by Campbell, the satellite company. They have donated that. We said, okay, why don't we use the satellite thing? So that time LoRa and Sigfox, everything was coming that time. We didn't have any mesh networking. I think now we can use the really good mesh technology. So this is the block diagram, and then we have the rain gas sensor, which connects to the Sonoma State campus. They have a the control room where all the status of the rainfall, it goes to that rain gas sensor, and then once we have that level of the water, it triggers it. Again, we use here the open source hardware migrated to a fully production version there, and it comes to the Sonoma State. We have developed our own cloud, then connected to the AWS cloud, and then connected to the SSU LAN network because we don't want to really connect to the outside world. And then pass it on to the city. It is up to them what they are going to use the data, because we don't want to directly send to the citizens. It is going to the city. They will make a decision whether to share with the citizens, or we have to keep themselves, or is just a data on that. So and then this is the some of the the analytics we got it. When is the peak rain, when is the off peak rain, what is the month you have to be really careful, what precautions they have to take. We got it from the, initially with the IBM Bluemix. We integrated IBM Bluemix with the, hardware, and then got the details. On the bottom side, you see that along with that, we also decided, this again came from the students, that instead of just measuring the rainfall, why don't we measure the environmental also, like for example, temperature, humidity, then light, then your gas sensor. So we just built one box where all the sensors are installed, and it's connected to a general purpose hardware, and then again that data is sent in. Because the power is available, connectivity is available, we thought let's make use of those components, and we did. And today we are able to read at least 6 sensor data in the mountains, which includes the temperature, humidity, gas, light, and the rain gas sensors. So we have integrated with that. It's available today. Now we need to go on to the fully production model. It's all the data has been collected. It is available for the city to analyze it and how we can go into the production mode. So like I mentioned in one of the key performance parameters for the next phase is that how we make that as a production and get the real data and how it is getting beneficial. That's the important thing, right? The action cluster form is how it is getting benefited, what is the occurrence from this one. I think next, probably when we present next time, we would like to come out with some real-time data. That's our goal for the next GCTC conference. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Shiva? Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, go.
Sure. Is there any plan to work with other cities than city that you already work with?
Absolutely. The goal is to scale it up and bring the same technology instead of reinventing nothing and definitely work with us.
Right. Anything in the pipeline?
As of now, we have one in Asia because especially in India, they have this problem. So they
Right.
approached us, and we're trying to solve some kind of administrative issues there. They approached us. A lot of cities in India, they have this rainwater problem.
Right. Okay.
Did Amazon interested in follow up with the results and take that learning system? Did they just donate the virtual cloud, or they were interested to take this to the farther steps and support you in expanding this?
Yeah, I can provide a proper you can add. The Amazon when approached, they are actually providing all their cloud and AWS IoT cloud. Definitely they want to use this data and how they can improve on their product. Yes, they want to do that. The only we are seeing the distance is a little issue because their exam was saying so little far for them. We're just trying to do everything virtually.
Yeah, but as a result of this discussion, after Amazon actually offered a 2-year subscription to the system, the city now is negotiating with Amazon for an unrelated thing because they have a lot of other data. But now that they're becoming familiar with the system, they're actually willing to buy their service for other type of data that they have. And with respect to your question, as you know, because of the fire in November, right now one of the big issues in Northern California is fire detection. So the federal government is providing a huge amount of funding for any kind of system that can detect fire.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, there's actually a $600 million that.
Can I get some of that money myself?
Absolutely.
We need to talk, because we have fire prediction too.
So there's definitely a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Particularly with respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just appreciate all the information being shared because I feel like there's so much more details that we can actually build on, and that's where the sidebar meetings I think can really come in handy. And as we start really kind of building systems for us to kind of talk, that's where we can kind of dig in more. I feel like it's such a, we need to find better ways of doing that basically. Stephanie, you want to go for your smart city vision, strategic planning, and digital transformation methodology. Are we going to be able to see your metropolitan intelligence platform sometime? Sounds interesting.
At some point, if everyone else can get into their spots, do we have enough time?
No, we have one more. Shiva has one more. I don't know if he wants to do it still.
But I don't know if there's a way later this week or something, but yeah, I can show
Okay.
you,